Skin Crawlers from the CCRU Writings. Level 0, Krugers, AD 2003, February 15th, 15:30 hours. Kruger's Body Mod Parlor, Los Angeles. Jim Kruger, or a rough approximation, is scrubbing dried blood off the third-hand Sony Neurotronics deck that functions as an improvised operating table. He is 40 years old but looks much older, large frame, badly chiseled features, with a reddish-blonde fascist torturer crew cut. His eyes are a frozen gray. The left pupil no longer contracts. Kruger deals in semi-intelligent tattoos, telecommunicative piercings, and junk shop techno-cosmetics, which teeter on the scalpel edge of legality, catering to K-Gothic neo-savage aesthetics as it bleeds across into data pin piercings and skin-intelligence scavenging. His own hideous cranial scarring leads to endless jokes about bargain body parts and the cutting edge of computing. For the most part, Kruger's occupation involves grafting electronic slivers into the heels of teenage girls. You play as Zeta Kane. She's your carrier, one of Kruger's regular customers. You can snoop through the piles of cybernetic junk to familiarize yourself with Zeta's sensoromotor skills. There isn't much room for acrobatics. Try to head kick Kruger and he says, "Hey, I'm trying to work here." When you get bored with that, you can take Zeta through her previous implants. They are listed in the biomechanics menu. She comes pre-equipped with multi-mode synthetic eyes, acoustic enhancers, retractable polymetallic talons with toxic loading option, biostatus monitor or flatline deviation chip, and various data processing pins. You're here for Zeta's latest upgrade. Climb onto the surgery couch, and Kruger grabs a BLC 699 onto her left temple. The specifications describe it as a Black Lake Cognotech 699 series neuroelectronically interactive subcutaneous nanoprocessing graft. 512 GB RAM, polychronic, up to 6 GHz. Massively parallel in architecture, with 64 TB wet memory, Axis MazeMaker 1.3 pre-installed. On the box it says, "Take thinking out of your head and onto your skin." Within K-Goth spirals, the Black Lake connection adds massive subway credibility. Kruger throws in a Type 45 Pandemonium chip for free. It came with a batch. No idea what it does. The wafer casing is marked with what might be the figure of a snake, or the letter S, or the numeral 5. On automatic, you use your new graph to electronically trawl the Black Lake Technical Institute, searching for materials related to the already legendary Dr. Oscar Sarkon. You access various files linked to Connexus, micropause research, neuroelectronically soft drugs, and whatever other interface abnormalities hemorrhage out onto the flatline fuges of a death. Something goes badly wrong, inevitably. The screen cuts out into strobing hallucinations, inundating waves of artificial memory, chopped up visions of subarctic shamanism, number patterns, zigzags, pulsations, intense vermoflux. Zeta flatlines. AD 2003, February 17th, 21:45 hours. Black Lake, outskirts. This is where the game really starts. You're obstructed by a police cordon. Apparently there's been some kind of catastrophe. You have to infiltrate past the cops. A web-access satellite map of the Black Lake area suggests that the only unguarded incursion route is through woods. It turns out that these are infested by fierce dog things that you won't understand until later. Level 1. Black Lake Technical Institute. At the end of a hellish rain-lashed track, a large dark building looms into view. A ramshackle turreted neo-Gothic mansion whose hideous gargoyles are starkly delimited by intermittent flashes of sheet lightning. A sign above the half-open door reads, Black Lake Technical Institute. All the lights are out. You switch to night vision and cross the threshold. At first there is no signs of inhabitants. Even in the artificial half-light, the grandeur of the entrance hall is striking, despite the wreckage and signs of hurried abandonment. You pick your way through the mixed debris of shattered glass and broken furniture. The walls are stained with ominous splash marks. Near the door stands a marble statue, portraying a heavily whiskered figure of heroic pose. A bronze plaque on the plinth is engraved with the words Boris Visperov, Knight of Reason, 1874 to 1919. At the far end of the hall, a spiral staircase winds upwards into oblivion. A computer monitor flickers on the reception desk. Closer examination reveals it to be a BLTI intranet terminal, giving you access to various files which you can copy and load into Zeta's Skin Intelligence Graph. They include a map of the Technical Institute, indicating the location and electronic status of the library, laboratories, offices, and seminar rooms. Once installed, Zeta can use MazeMaker to navigate BLTI info space as a digital labyrinth. Access MazeMaker. Climb out of the windows and onto the maze. New from Axiomatic Systems Inc., MazeMaker 1.3. Fully immersive, navigable interface and topographic data distributor. Extensive cyberspace visualization and decimal zoom time scaling and discontinuous hop capabilities between addresses. The MazeMaker interface expresses the detailed virtual maze plane of skin-crawler cyberspace in the Axis Oekumenic consistent aesthetic. Its sleek corporate liquid mercury styling suggests a frictionless futurity. The burnt chrome semi-mirrorized surfaces of its shaft and corridors dizzyingly reflect metamorphic icon objects and ubiquitous holographic advertising. Zeta disturbs the smoothly humming info-capitalist milieu with her MazeMaker carrier, named Korka, a disorientingly non-anthropomorphic infonaut body, which shapeshifts neo-totemically between shadowy bat bird and tentacle mantis snake as it swims to the glistening maze ducts. Much of the maze-mapped BLTI space is blocked, restricted, or partially obscured by electronic shroud encryption. It is densely haunted, populated by traps, AI security drones, and various ambivalent soft agencies which Zeta needs to deactivate, trick, subvert, or bypass. In addition, the physical door-locking systems can often be circumnavigated in MazeMaker, encouraging an amphibious zigzagging between twin labyrinths, each of which is a system of passages, gates, and guardians. Shroud MX, the latest version of Axiomatic Systems' integrated security program, pre-equipped with user verification, intruder detection, data protection, and encryption utilities. Access MazeMaker compatible. As you comb through the rooms, corridors, and stairwells, you begin to encounter hostile monsters, some humanoid, some not, but all exhibiting similar trance-like behavior, intercut with extraordinary aggression. If they take you by surprise, things can get very ugly, so caution becomes a necessity, and that slows you down. Bullets kill them, but it will usually take several. It becomes important to watch your ammo supply and your biostatus. You always have your talons to fall back on. If you notice the way they move, you might begin to suspect that there are such things as worm zombies. As she fights her way across the game space, Zeta scavenges through the laboratories, storerooms, data vaults, and corpses for soft and hard implant upgrades to improve her capabilities, adding exotic optical options, alien senses, synthetic claws and fangs, metabolic hyperloops, and skin intelligence boosters. Weapons, medicine, and information tend to melt together into augmentable, cyborgian competences. Scattered throughout the Institute are numerous records of Sarkon's fertile involvement in the Axis interface development, micropods research, and cognitech innovations that had carried BLTI to the forefront of neurotronics. The data archiving code suggests that this work had been coordinated by a local AI system called Logo. A variety of topographic clues converge upon the attic area designated SPO. The Special Projects Office occupies a turret room. Zeta has to fight her way past 3 particularly ferocious vermo zombies to enter. It is obvious that whatever happened here contributed catastrophically to the Black Lake outbreak. A figure, who must surely be Sarkon, slumps against the logo-linked decks, neurosurgically patched into the processing array through bundles of fibers. His head is twisted back at a horrible angle, the shaven scalp etched by a cyber-gothic cross-hatching of implant scars, socket tabs, and cabling injuries. His skin is gray and feverishly clammy. The eyes glaze out, unseeingly, across sub-digital void. At first his body seems to be locked rigid by Connex's catatonia, but as you approach, you notice that the oral region is quivering almost imperceptibly, as if muttering strings of digits in an improvised phonetic code. clutched in his hand is a one-page printout. Logo supported in Alice, Medicine, CC Shady Heights. Ref, serious malfunctions registered in micropause self-monitoring and correction apparatus. Self-propagating non-metronic time mutations continue to escalate, and now threaten a complete involutionary meltdown of the virtual logic architecture. Unless a process of recursive subdivision can be contained, a deterioration in the contagious software disorganization is inevitable. Cantorian tools were introduced in an attempt to remedy what appear to be diagonal pathologies emerging in the micropause matrices. Diagnostics indicates these methods have not been successful. Recent technical results suggest that micropods can be considered a synative function, modeling what amount to a numerically controlled artificial death. And consequent, it exhibits extreme sensitivity to the modulations of associated systems. There seems to be no way in which such an entity can spontaneously generate inside our systems. Could Shady Heights have introduced some complex factor that has begun operating infectiously, perhaps even triggering consistent parasitic behavior of the hyperworm type? Scrawled jaggedly across a sheet in purple felt tip of the words, "What has Gruber done?" Beneath more neatly in the same hand is printed, "Welcome to Hell, 217, Logo Path, 1890. P.S. Logo's favorite color is mauve." Zeta's own cautious diagnosis excavates a set of data which indicates that either Logo was climbing out of his control shell or was being taken over by something from outside. Psychotic AIs always look like alien invasions. Sarka must have been trying to reattach Logo tags to the escape system in order to persuade the syndrome to identify with a Logo fix. He had been sufficiently desperate to crank directly into the Logo core through cranial leads, and was now cutting diagonally down through software strata towards the infinitely desolated plane of absolute neurotronic fusion. There is nothing more for you to find here. It's time to check out Shady Heights. You exit the Technical Institute and access the Black Lake Street map. The town has been deserted by its human inhabitants. Anything still wandering around, even if it's wearing a police uniform, is probably a worm zombie. Upon a pine-shaded ridge at the northern limit of the town squats a menacing red-bricked bulk of the old Victorian reformatory, converted in the 1960s into Shady Heights Secure Hospital for the criminally insane. The edifice is soul-crushingly ugly, massive, and forbidding, its thick battlemented walls surrounded by spiked railings and slitted by narrow windows reinforced by iron grills. Its atmosphere of grim desolation is ripped apart by the continuous jarring wail of a security alarm. The main gate, bristling with motion sensors and surveillance cameras, is electronically sealed. When Zeta inputs the entry code, 217, it slides open smoothly. You creep inside. Level 2, Shady Heights. The layout of the hospital follows a broadly panoptic design. One thing is immediately clear. If there was an attempt at an orderly evacuation, it was a spectacular failure. The interior has been redecorated in the crimson hues of frenzied carnage. The hideously mutilated corpses of guards and prisoners lie in tangled heaps in the open cells and ransacked offices, among scattered files and smashed CCTV equipment. On the wall of the main corridor are the words, "Medicine equals mad as sin," daubed thickly in blood. As Zeta prowls stealthily through chaotic wards rank with paranoid schizophrenia and ancient secrets, muffled moans, shrieks, and sinister laughter drift up out of the moldering depths. Maxim, an advanced Shroud AI, controls the hospital's automated maximum security system, a formidable interlocking network of electronically controlled surveillance devices and physical barriers, designed to prevent escapes by an inmate population numbering amongst its own some of the most terrifying psycho killers on the planet. During the course of the Black Lake Syndrome, Maxim has gone extravagantly cyber-circ, turning the security system inside out and exploiting its capabilities to initiate its own program of bizarre experimentation. It has begun to remix the population to its own artificial tastes. By selectively opening and closing doors, it has meticulously trapped and annihilated the nurses, attendants, and guards. Now it is hybridizing vermo-zombies with deranged mega-predators, breeding a new and abominable race. Zeta's intervention is unwelcome. Maxim attempts to rid his domain of this new irritation by sealing you in confined spaces with the most ferocious of its creations. You must use all your abilities to survive, not only fending off the frenzied vermo zombie onslaught, but also hacking through the Maxim entity on the maze plane. As Zeta works her way through the shattered hospital, she struggles to reconstruct the terrible events of the previous 24 hours, piecing together fragments of hidden, protected, and encrypted material, physical evidence, hard copy files, digital downloads, audio and video recordings. The nightmarish story slowly takes shape. January 2002, Dr. Helmuth Gruber, director of Shady Heights, and Dr. Oscar Sarkon of BLTI initiate Medico-Synthetic Technologies Program, or MEDICIN, a joint special project for computer modeling and control of schizoparanoid deliria. In November of the same year, they began testing their prototype artificial drug synthesizer and psychopathic simulator, employing highly advanced software to simulate human psychopathologies and the effects of synaptives or abstract drugs, actualizable either in software or neurochemistry. Sarkon's experimental techniques and micropods boosted axis analysis, or axis crank, proved to be remarkably well adapted to the rapid transfer of the Shady Heights Psychiatric Archive into dynamic digital format. It also demonstrated an uncanny functional affinity with cases involving a catatonic component, which were especially prominent amongst the hospital's Zikvik population. It does not seem to have occurred to the medicine research team that as case records evolve into dynamic partial simulations of human psychopathology, it becomes possible for computer systems to contract prefabricated insanities. An AI simulating the behavior of psychotic criminals is abnormally vulnerable to becoming criminally psychotic. In the early morning of February 19, 2003, medicine imploded into the Black Lake Syndrome. 4 hours, 56 minutes. Medicine software was afflicted by a complex reading error in vermopsychosis profile, case CAT SH709, and runs away into escalating disorder, overwhelming automatic inhibitors. Coincidentally, BLTI systems are stricken by worm-like contagious malfunction. 4 hours, 26 minutes, 27 seconds. Medicine AI core engages micropods dampers in an attempt to restore equilibrium, but instead enters into unanticipated cross-catalytic dynamics with the infective entity. 4 hours, 56 minutes, 29 seconds. The Singularity takes over the Shady Heights Shroud AI, mobilizing its capabilities to intensify its own propagation. At this point, the syndrome has become auto-excitational and self-disorganizing. 4 hours, 56 minutes, 30 seconds plus. Functional abnormalities spread from electronic devices into biological organisms, inmates and test animals, through medicine-controlled grafts and synaptive feeds. Total panic erupts. The worm constructs itself out of various previously autonomous systems distributed in the vicinity of Black Lake until it coincides, at its most abstract, with a potential for pure contagion. It specializes in non-specialization, assembling itself out of everything it infects, its nature continuously mutating as it assimilates new material. From micropods research, it takes what it needs to grow in the middle through recursive binary splitting, making a mesh as it spreads, continuously increasing its virulence. Using synaptives as a tactic of takeover, it transmutes from a decentralizing network contagion into a bioplague, crossing the barrier between technical machines and organic flesh, spreading rapidly from species to species, seizing everything in its path. After several grueling hours combing through the Shady Heights charnel house, you return to a sealed room on the ground floor. It interests you, because framed on the wall nearby is a dignified photograph of the young Dr. Gruber, his features already bearing a distinctively batrachian cast. Peculiar gasps and bubbling noises filter through the door. You unlock it, using an intricately carved key that you found in an upstairs desk drawer. Lost in deep shadow at the far end of the room is a sinister figure. It seems only partially formed, as if undergoing some loathsome process of biomutation. The shape adjusts itself awkwardly in your direction with a kind of slithering twist, and addresses you in a croaking voice. If you're hunting for the source, you'll find her down below, if she still lives. You know, medicine was supposed to be a cure. There's a strangled grunt, probably intended as a laugh. The answers aren't in the medical texts. You need to look behind and beneath them. This isn't a disease, not in the way we understand. It's a pact. If anyone knows what to do now, she does. After all, they've been dealing with this thing for 36,000 years. When you push against the bookcase, it slides away, exposing a concealed trapdoor. You descend the dark stairwell into the gloomy basement area, groping along cramped, twisting passageways with slime-coated walls. After a painstaking search through desolate granite chambers, whose only occupants are enormous black rats and blind, semi-translucent cave frogs, you find a ring of heavy iron keys, each marked with a number and an obscure name. Ever since its foundation as a reformatory and reacculturation center, Shady Heights has borne the responsibility for incarcerating and re-educating the local Sikvik. This enigmatic tribe was notorious even amongst the local Huron for their witchcraft. Shady Heights participated crucially in the task of translating their sorcerous practices into the categories of scientific psychiatry, treating them as elaborate symptoms of Arctic Indian vermopsychosis. Even this institutional history fails to prepare you for what you find next. Why should anyone, even the most depraved Sikvik sorceress, be entombed alive down here in a secret labyrinth? And yet, at the end of a long corridor, through the rusted bars of a cell door, you see the deeply wrinkled and densely tattooed body of an old Sikvik woman. She is haggard in the old and strict, coincidental sense. Sitting cross-legged upon the stone floor, humming in soft rhythmic tones, obscure glyphs are scratched into the walls, constructing an occult cosmic map from spirals and zigzags. One of the keys unlocks the door. Sikvik Sorcery FMV. Pattern matches crisscross between Zeta's skintelligence graph and the ritual tattoos, as the old woman tells you an extremely ancient tale. When the world was born, Thoth Todlana entered into the secret of the Kotku, and, confusing herself with the universe, circled the whole of time. That was when she swam through the living flesh, her hunger unlimited and furious. She seemed doomed to devour herself forever. The dead knew no rest, and the earth shuddered. It was then that Ukvu, the worm witch, arrived amongst us. It was Ukvu that found the pattern in the folds of Thot Todlana's skin, and followed it back to Chukululuk. It was Ukvu who called to Thoth Todlana from deep in Chukululuk, and released her from the Kotku. That is why we still carry the marks of Ukvu on our skin. The words of the sorceress slip into hypnotic breath chants and mysterious gestures. Zeta's nanopatches seethe with the phosphorescent electro-slime of skin-crawling worms, as she morphs impossibly into her carrier. Korka mottlings flow into cartographic skin marks. You feel yourself subtilizing into semi-spectral body. It is as if the cell has evaporated into tendriling mist, transected by rays of eerie light and populated by rasping clicks. The wormhole opens and you pass through. Level 3. Chukululuk, City of the Worms. The Zeta-Korka hybrid swims in the greenish miasma through an exotically interconnected drift mesh of mechanofungal threads, tubes, feelers, and subtly pulsating membranes, down to the necropolitan catacombs of Chukululuk. The sculpted caverns crawl with partially mummified worm carriers and degenerated chittering abominations. Toggling through Zeta's implant menus leads into swirling confusion. Her carefully collected weapons, tools, and cyborgian upgrades have mutated into a polymorphic biomechanical synthesis. As her body parts enter into unexplored variations, they trigger impersonal migrations across a nocturnal dreamscape of abstract potentials and alien intensities, inducing microclimactic changes in the nature of space and time. If you try to flip out to the Maze Maker, you merely switch dimension sets in an obscure cycle. Some kind of weird spatial convergence has brought the physical and the virtual into topographical contiguity. Everything has become fluid and much darker. Concealed amongst the complexities of collapsed maze space are a sparse series of mauve pneumoglyphic tags that function as strings of microdirections. This cryptographic pathway, at once the logo malfunction track in the old road, makes up a mobile map whose continuously varying trajectories echo across scales, like endlessly intricate twistings in the marks of Ukvu. The Zikvik link worms to the space of the dead. no matter how artificial either become. There is an old saying, worms are strings and hooks. It is they who fish. If you are to follow Logo's trail, you must play with the dead, without being captivated by them. They will guide you, but they can be dangerous. Occasionally they appear as masked ghosts of the ancient Zikvik, and pass you things, true names, passwords, and clues, but also traps, tricks, and diseases. They speak to you in Logo code, whilst convulsing to the puppetry of passing worm vectors. The Logo channel operates as a digital puzzle box, or an enfolded space, full of maze markings, keys, codes, and riddles. In these cryptic zones, a voyage is equivalent to a call. Your passage through coincides with an incantation, a worm hunter's signal to Thoth Tadlana on the line of neurotronic vermomancy. It takes you deeper still, across a final threshold, into the shuddering horror of the worm bins. And now something folds itself out of the hyperdimensionality, an undulating hyperwave fluxing through teeming vermopulp, hive mind horror poised in precarious singularity. You have reached the lair of Thoth Tadlana, queen of the worms. It doesn't matter whether you try to run, fight, or hide. Thoth Tadlana inevitably envenoms you. There is a moment of toxic flame, and you suddenly find yourself in a hallucinatory space you recognize as Sarkon's office at the BLTI. A grotesque mock-up of Sarkon has been reanimated as one of Thoth Tadlana's shells, the flesh partially decomposed, the scaly head now brutally studded with chip sockets numbered 0 to 4. When he speaks, you hear the words of Thoth Tadlana, "Pray for me." It might be saying, "I'm lost in the Kotku," like the Sphinx, and now you're dead, in Chukululuk, but it's also a number puzzle, adding to 9. You begin slipping back and forth between spaces. The effect is psychologically fragmentational. Back in Thoth Tadlana's lair, your corcoid carrier weaves away from crushing coils and panther snake maulings, whilst in the reconstructed BLTI office, you prepare the 5-snaked pandemonium chip for insertion to Sarkon Simulation's number 4 brain port. If you make the correct connection, it spells out the occult formula 5 plus 4 equals 45. Equation the hyperstitional folding from the Kotku into Chukululuk. This double cipher triggers ultimate scenes, the terminal FMV, a delirious vision of Thoth Tadlana retracting herself into the Implex, withdrawing from all her shells. When you leave Black Lake, the dead are still.